Hello, everyone. This is It's Mental Podcast. Tonight we have a special guest, CC Hexe. We met at the Berlin comedy scene. She is an amazing comedian. Now she moved back to New York City, but we are so lucky to have her on air. CC, do you want to take over to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes. My name is CC Hexe. I am a comedian. I don't know if we want to get right into the mental illness stuff, but Moni and I met in my second foray into comedy. I had already started and in a breakdown quit doing comedy before starting again in Berlin. So should I get right into it? Should I just tell the story?
Let's save the best till later.
Let's save the best till later. So we know each other from doing comedy in Berlin.
Yeah. So I guess the next question is actually right into it. So what's your relationship with mental illness?
Well, it's been, I first started seeing a therapist. I first went on medication when I was 17. It started out with I'm adopted, and whether or not it probably does, but whether or not it has anything to do with the following, I was very attached to my parents as a child, even as a teenager. Not that I was like a loser kid, because I wasn't. I was like totally cool, but I could never go sleep over at friends' houses. I could never go do any sleepaway camp type of thing. And the summer I was 17 years old, my family said, enough is enough. You're spending some time away from us. And I had a full-on breakdown. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I could barely talk. I was so distressed at being away from home that summer I started seeing a psychiatrist and a psychologist, and I went on medication. And that was the beginning of my relationship with mental illness. I imagine that I had always had, I've always been me, so I'm sure that those things were always present, but I didn't start to deal with them until that summer when I was 17 and I couldn't leave my parents without, professional help.
I think that's very interesting to know. It's very similar to me. I had my first mental breakdown, first episode. Like the first time I know it was depression was 3 years ago. But when you start to dig back, actually things happened years, decades back.
Yeah. And it's something that's a part of you. Sorry, continue.
So when you have the first episode at 17, how long it took you to get out of it?
Well, I was immediately put on quite a heavy sedative. And I was also put on an antidepressant medication. Now, the sedative is called Ativan. And it made me, I slept probably about 18 hours a day. I still did the work that I was doing that summer. I was in a summer stock theater, and I was still going to rehearsal, but I wasn't doing anything but going to rehearsal and sleeping. And then 2 weeks in, the other medication that I was taking, which was an antidepressant called Celexa, that started to kick in. And I started being able to go slowly off the Ativan and having some waking time where I was able to enjoy my life without this crushing terror that I had at being away from home. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that was sort of my first management of it. I'm a big believer in medication. I've been on medication for, at this point, 20 years, which is more than half my life. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's a magic pill. that will change your life. You know, I still have depression and I still have the occasional breakdown and I deal with things. I'm actually just on I had a breakdown this summer and I'm on a new medication cocktail because of it. But it's something that there's something wrong with our brains, you know, with mental illness is not mental wellness. And if you have an illness, you take medicine. And so I'm a big believer in both talk therapy and medication. I know a lot of people are afraid of medication, think that it'll change who they are. Yeah. And it just doesn't. It doesn't change who you are. It just lets you be well.
I think this is really interesting. Actually, I'm thinking about go back to medication very soon. 3 years ago, I had a major episode. So at the time, like around last year, 2019, summer, spring, that time, I thought I'm fully recovered. I stopped medication. It went well. I survived the first winter. And professional-wise, comedy-wise, I was doing really great also with my personal life. And I thought depression was part of my past life, not in my current life anymore. But now I start to realize it's something will live with us forever. It's just sometimes more, sometimes less. In order to have a okay life, we should accept the fact it will not disappear, but just respect it and take care of our disease and ourselves. And I had a breakdown recently. Actually, I had multiple small breakdown lately. It's been more and more frequent. In the past, I have a breakdown maybe every 3, 4, 6 months. And in the past 2 months, it's been like every week, sometimes multiple times per week. Yesterday, I had a really, really nice evening. I hung out with friends, had a really nice dinner. I slept well because I took some sleeping medication. Waking up with a fully slept, relaxed body and with the fresh memory from yesterday, waking up, I feel horrible. And I just feel, what's the reason for me to do anything? And the mood swing has been worse and worse. And today I realize I'm so stressed and so depressed. I start to bleed from my whole mouth. And I check online, I realize it's normal for people who suffer from a large amount of stress. So today I'm thinking maybe I should go back to medication, antidepressant fairly soon, because it's out of control. And when our mental swings like this, physical body also being impacted, what we have to lose if we just can take some medication and feel better?
I think that's the thing with medication is I did it once, not with medication, but with therapy. I was doing really well. And I thought, well, I don't need this anymore. I'm doing really well. But you're doing really well because you're doing the work. And I also want to say, though, I completely agree with you. Yes, we have to accept that depression is something that you live with. It doesn't become part of your past. It is something that you deal with. But so is happiness and so is joy. And it's hard to remember that when you're in the depression. But I think it's important to remember that life is also full of wonderful moments. And it's actually it's kind of silly. I only have one tattoo. Can I tell a silly story?
Of course.
it's a mental health story. I only have one tattoo. It's really small. And I got it during a very difficult part of my life. I went through a terrible divorce, and I had quit my job. I quit a very good job. I was writing for a television show called The Colbert Report, and I quit, and because I kind of was having a breakdown, and my marriage wasn't working. And this one week, I had this job where I was sent on an assignment to write professionally for money again after I had quit writing professionally for money. And I was sent to Vancouver for a weekend, and it was paid for. And it was this wonderful weekend, this island of time amidst this terrible part of my life. And I got a tattoo to remind myself that things can be good. And every time I look at my tattoo, I remember, I can look at it when I'm doing really terribly, and I can say, yeah, things have been bad before, but things have been good before, and things will be good again.
Yeah, I think that's really, really beautiful. Really, thank you for sharing this story. I agree. Life is full of joy and wonderful things. But when we are in depression, it's hard to remember. And I want to comment on the medication again, because from what I learned, depression takes away two things from us. One is the motivation to do things. The other is the ability, the physical ability to feel joy. So it's easy to say medication doesn't work. We can overcome things with our own mind. But would you say don't take medication when you have cancer? Just try to be strong and power through? You wouldn't. So with antidepressant, it's the same. When our body physically, it cannot feel joy anymore. It doesn't have the ability to feel joy. No matter how much wonderful things happening around you, you won't feel it. So you need the physical medication to help you. Just like going through chemotherapy for cancer. If you have cancer for your body, you go treatment. It's the same with depression. It's not only mental disease. It affects you physically too.
Oh, absolutely. It affects you physically. I mean, the amount that I sleep when I'm going through depression, it's because I can barely walk, and I go through, when I'm really bad, I can't eat. And that's a real physical symptom. Yeah, it's something that absolutely affects you physically as well as mentally.
Yeah.
And obviously your brain is part of your body, so it's physically affecting you that way. I mean,
yes. Yeah. So, dear audience, if you are watching this episode and you are still struggling, if you should look for help from psychiatrists, really, please don't hesitate. Go to see a psychiatrist. Ask the expert for opinion. If they say you should take the medication, it's okay to not believe it. Go to see another psychiatrist. See 3 or 5 of them. But if all of them tell you you should use medication, try it. What else you have to lose if you are really dying? Give it a try.
What do you have to lose exactly? Because if you take it for a month or 2 months and it doesn't work, stop taking it. It's if you take it, you don't have to take it forever. You just take it until you see if it works. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't. And maybe medication's not for you. Mm-hmm. But don't have this. To me, it's like a machismo, like this, medication. I'm not going to take medication. It's not going to, the world's still going to be terrible, and my wife still left me, and but take the fucking medication. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this. If you're going to bleep me,
it's okay.
I mean, to me, it feels a little bit the fear of the medication. Maybe this is just because of people in my life who I know have refused medication and treatment is it feels so stubborn and macho.
Yeah.
It's like they're admitting that they can't. It's admitting weakness, and it's not admitting weakness. Or what I mean is like certain people feel that therapy and like your last episode, right, was about, I didn't listen to it yet. Sorry. I think you just posted it. But I saw that it's about like men and mental illness, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's an episode with Oliver Socha. He is a Serbian comedian, and that means he lives in a very macho society with a very masculine family. And it was hard for him to look for therapy at the beginning. And he is a big guy, 2 meters tall. So if he looked for help and it worked, why not you also try something? Just try anything. Yeah. Anything helps.
Yeah, exactly. That there's this feeling that real men don't need help. And that's just so false.
Yeah. I want to share, do you remember? Okay, I will share my story first. I want to share the story of, the journey when I started to use medication. Just like you said, depression is not only a mental illness. It impacts your physical health tremendously. For example, 3 years ago, my eyes start to not able to see colors, and I couldn't physically move anymore. I didn't have any energy. I couldn't eat. I barely could sleep. And for a while, I couldn't I couldn't talk. So ability to talk got lost. So it's really not only a mental health issue. And when you are in a deep depression like that, your whole mental and physical are shut down. So you can go to see therapy, but you couldn't process the information you hear because physically you are fucked up. And there's nothing wrong to use medication to help you to get out of that deep depression, to put you back into like normal state where you can talk and can process information again. And there's nothing wrong about that. So 3 years ago, I was in a state like that. It was extremely hard to find like real information from people around me about depression, because I realized it's a very taboo topic. Most people who have depression or had depression, they try to hide from it. They pretend it didn't happen to them. And so at the end, I only found one person I know who have experience, and I wanted to ask his advice. I just wanted to talk, and it's just scary to be in this thing alone. So I wanted to talk, and he told me he doesn't want to talk because that's in his past. He doesn't want to affect his current. And that's why I started this podcast for those people who were like me 3 years ago, feeling lost, feeling helpless, feeling alone, that they can get some real information from firsthand real people, how they experience their journey. So anyway, back to 3 years ago, I went to see a psychiatrist. He prescribed me venlafaxine. So I start to take it. Immediately, I feel much better. I start to be able to feel joy, and I start to be able to do things. I could move around. I do feel I was in a manic situation for maybe 1 or 2 months, but that's nothing really harmful happened to me. And in the end, it helped. The whole medication slowly helped me get out of this bad physical situation. And with the psychotherapy help, I was living a quite normal, happy, and successful life for almost 2 years. So I think it really was it.
I agree.
And I want to ask you, how was your first time taking the antidepressant? Was it good, bad, stressful?
It was a positive experience. And I've been on a few different, call it cocktails of medications over my life. And the problem is that not for everyone. I mean, some people get to go on a medication once and then take it forever and it works. For me, the first thing I was on was called Celexa. It stopped working after about 5 or 6 years. It's sort of, I didn't have a breakdown. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. It was shortly after I graduated college, and I just, like you just described, a lot of the symptoms you just described, and I switched from Celexa to a drug called Zoloft. And Zoloft worked for me for many years. The funny thing about Zoloft, though, was that I had terrible sexual side effects with it. So they added a drug called wellbutrin, which just took that away. And it's kind of miraculous the way the chemistry works, that they can be like, oh, well, that does that, well, then this will undo that. But it just, they know what they're doing. And I was on that combination for about 10 years, maybe even a little more, maybe more like 13 years, 14 years. And until it sort of stopped working. And then during COVID, I went through something that I think probably but I think a lot of people went through some difficulties, whether they struggle with mental illness or not. I think a lot of us had trouble dealing with 2020. Mm-hmm. And this summer I had a breakdown that actually landed me in the psych ward overnight. I wasn't officially admitted, but what happened, I guess I could tell the story. Mm-hmm. It's now's as good a time as any. I got very, very depressed, and spurred on by a family fight, I got to this frantic point where I called the suicide hotline. And I just wanted to talk to someone who wasn't yelling at me, someone who was nice and friendly. But I made the mistake of, when they asked me where I was, I made the mistake of telling them my address. So basically what happened was, their job, once you call, is to make sure that you don't kill yourself. And I wasn't going to kill myself. Like I said, I just needed to talk to someone. It was in the middle of the night. I have a therapist, but your therapist isn't a 24-hour, I mean, maybe some of them are if you pay them enough, but I couldn't call mine at like the middle of the night. So I called the suicide hotline, and they called the cops. Mm-hmm. And the cops showed up at my house, and they knew they were going to take me before they showed up. They didn't make it seem like that when they were there. They were, trying to talk to me, trying to calm me down, but they knew that I was getting in the car. And it was so bizarre. It was the middle of the night, so I'm wearing this nightgown. Before they took me, I said I wanted to go get underwear. They wouldn't let me go get underwear. And they take me and they put me in handcuffs, and they tie the handcuffs to a belt, to like this handcuff belt. It's like this medieval contraption. And as soon as they get me in the car, they stop being nice. They stop trying to calm me down. Now that I'm in the car, I'm in the car. So they drive me to the station to figure out where they're going to take me for the night, because they're not going to put me in jail because I haven't broken any laws. So I have to go to a hospital. So they're looking for a bed for me. Now, as this happens, I mean, as we're talking, so we were talking about depression having physical and physiological elements. I have to shit myself. I'm about to shit my pants, like my non-pants that they didn't let me go get. Like, I am so worked up and so, I'm just so worked up. I don't want to use the word hysterical because I think it's misogynist for some reason, but I'm so beyond stable that my guts are in knots. And I say to the cops, I'm like, one way or another, I'm gonna shit. Like, whether or not I'm on a toilet is kind of up to you guys right now. So the female cop, there's two of them. There's two huge people taking on me who is like, I know I'm chunky, but I'm still pretty wee. And she takes me into the bathroom. Thank God at this point, I'm not wearing underwear. I like hitch up. I like kind of do a shimmy and like hitch up my nightgown. And I shit and I look at her and I'm like, can you uncuff one of my hands so that I can wipe myself? Before she uncuffs me, she says, you're not going to attack me, right? She has a gun. She has a taser. She has pepper spray. I have major depressive disorder. In a fight, she is she's gonna win. I am outmatched. So, and it's not a stereotype like, oh, when those people with severe depression, they get a surge of strength. Like, no, that doesn't happen.
So they are cops in New York.
There are cops, yeah. There are the cops in New York, and I'm at the station, and they're figuring out, and this is all during COVID, and I'm like shitting in the cop station, and they're figuring out where they're gonna take me. So then they finally take me. They find a bed for me in this psych ward where they take away my nightgown because I can like attack someone with it or something or whatever. And they give me these paper clothes that almost immediately rip up the like ass because I'm luscious. And I'm like, how is this better than like, I'm just like walking rape bait. It's really bad. I have notes right here because I don't want to forget any part of this story because it's a fucking story. Right. So I go into this room. I'm sharing a room with like half a dozen other women. And as soon as I walk in, this woman's like, Martha from Riverhead High School. And I was just like, no, I don't know. You think I'm someone that I'm not or whatever. And then someone else walks in the room and she's like, Martha from Riverhead High School. And the person was like, no, whatever. And then she comes, she's like, yeah, you're Martha. She turns back to me. And she's like, you're Martha. And I was like, I'm not Martha. And I need to be seen. I just like, whatever. And they come, this isn't funny. This sucks.
Tragedy is tragedy plus time equal to comedy. Yeah. I think maybe more time.
So I'm sharing a room with these people who are like genuinely, have like not to say that depression isn't mental illness, but like I'm sharing a room with people who have like broken with reality. And people who are like committed really for their own safety and the safety of others. And one of the things that they do is they take away your phone. So you can't call anyone because you don't have any phone numbers. So the funniest thing to me about it was, so in the States forever, there was this number you could dial to get someone's phone number. You would dial 411 and then you would say someone's such and such name in such and such city, and they'd give you the phone number. But now everyone has a cell phone, so no one ever calls that number. But apparently that number still exists. So like the only people calling that number are the people in jail and in the psych ward who are just like, I need a lawyer. I need my mom. Like they have me. They took me away. So those poor people who work at that thing now. But anyway, so I'm walking around in these ripped pants with no underwear, and they're just playing. There's a channel, there's a cable channel in the States that just plays like rerun sitcoms 24 hours a day. And they're playing Friends. And I was like, yeah, man, I don't really like this show. And then they start playing Family Guy. And I was like, I need to get the fuck out of here. And finally, like after about 18 hours, I finally get in to see a doctor because the United States is a nightmare. And like,
yeah,
I'm, so no one sees me for ages. And they see me for like 15 minutes and they're like, oh no, you're fine. You're not gonna strangle anyone with your nightgown. Like we can let you go. So, but the fact that this whole thing was like it was, even though I wasn't committed, and I didn't like have to spend an extended amount of time in the psych ward, it was still this wake up call that it was time for me to change my medication again. Mm-hmm. So I'm just a few months into like yet another cocktail that hopefully will last for a long time. But, you don't know. I'm not naive enough to think that like, well, now we've got it. Like now's the perfect combination and now it'll work forever. It's something that I'm going to have to manage forever. Like diabetes,
Yeah.
It's just.
Yeah.
Hard.
Just think it as diabetes. If you have diabetes, would people ask you to not take medication, but eat less carbs?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
but eat less carbs.
I think we once talked about that you also have eating disorder. Do you want to talk about it?
Sure. Yeah. I developed eating disorders later in life because strange for a variety of reasons. Mainly, I struggle with compulsive eating and overeating. There is a sprinkle of bulimia on for good measure. But my eating disorders, I think, anorexia, bulimia, they get a lot of attention because their victims are hot. That's terrible to say. But like we kind of glorify, I think there's a little bit of a glorification of there's like, oh, poor anorexic, like if only she were 3 pounds heavier, then she, it's like they're kind of glamorous illnesses, they're model illnesses, they're actress illnesses.
Yeah.
And they're tragic. Mm-hmm. And I'm a comedian, so I say shitty things and I'm a dick. But like I don't, know people with tragic anorexia are not hot. It's a serious illness. Mm-hmm. But my experience has been the other side, has been really extensive overeating. Mm-hmm. And looking to food for comfort. Yeah. And I always used food as a coping mechanism against misogyny in an odd way. Mm-hmm. I always used food, and still to this day use food to be like, I'll eat fucking 3 burgers at McDonald's with the boys. Like I can do, you think I'm not man enough to drink 18 beers in one sitting? Like I'll drink fucking 18 beers. Like I'm a man. It's been this the ability to take down enormous quantities of food and still be thin and hot, like occupied a large portion of my brain. Mm-hmm. And as I got older, my metabolism changed, as it does for everyone, you know, and I could no longer eat, you know, a burger for every meal and still be thin.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of becomes this spiral of shame eating.
Mm-hmm.
That for me is like, well, if I'm fat, I might as well be fucking fat. Let's just bring over the Reese's Pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also this struggle with, you know, body positivity, because
Mm-hmm.
I want to love my body, and I do love my body, and I think, you know, I still think I'm, you know, deserving of love and all of that stuff. But it's hard to live in a society that values being thin so much and to not be thin.
So when did you realize you have eating disorder?
I realized I had an eating disorder probably shortly after I got divorced, and I was almost 200 pounds. I don't know how much that is in kilos, but it's plenty.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was left, eating was this thing for me that I could turn off my brain. I could turn off my depression. If I was eating, all I was thinking about was the food and how the food was delicious. I was also never the kind of person that would I won't just eat a bag of corn chips, but I will spend my fucking paycheck at a steakhouse, you know, and I'll eat and eat and eat and eat. And as long as I am masticating and there's food going down my gullet, I feel like that's the only thing in the world. And my overeating was a way to like shove out. It was a it was an unhealthy coping mechanism for my depression, is really what it was, or what it still is. But I'm really trying to.
So
at the moment, I'm really trying to manage it.
You only realize it after your divorce, but after you realize it, do you see pattern before that? It's already actually with you?
Absolutely. I started to look back on my life and see, I think my first overeating, my first real, call it a marathon overeating, was going out to dinner with my parents and their friends kids. And all the kids were boys, and they said that they were in an eating club that I couldn't join because girls couldn't eat as much as boys. And I remember eating so much and making myself sick and saying like, so can I join your club? Can I join your eating club? And they were like, there is no club. You're disgusting, you know, and just making fun of me.
I'm so sorry.
Like that. It's okay. I mean, it's like 30 years ago. No, not 30 years ago, but it's a good long time. It's like 25 years ago at this point. You know, but it did make me internalize this sort of like, women can't win when it comes to food, because we're expected to be able to like throw down with the burger, but then have it not show up on our bodies. So so that's when the bulimia started to come in. When I got to be about 200 pounds, and I said, well, I can't stop eating, because if I stop eating, the bad thoughts are going to come in. You know, as long as I'm eating, I'm not getting divorced. I'm eating, you know, all I'm doing is eating. I'm not getting older. I'm not getting divorced. I'm not looking for a job. I'm just eating. So I wasn't about to get rid of the eating, but I didn't want to be 200 pounds anymore. So I started eating and then throwing up.
Was it the first time you started throwing up?
It wasn't the first time I had ever done it, but it was the first time I had done it consistently. I had done it in the past, but isolated. sort of flights of fancy, like maybe I'll be bulimic. Oh no, this is terrible. I'm not going to keep this up. But yeah, and that's another thing. People think of eating disorders as like things that happen to teenagers. And it didn't happen to me as a teenager. It happened to me as like a grown woman. And I blame society. No, yeah. It's just it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation a little bit. Like, you've got to be this beautiful, thin creature, but you also, especially, you know, in a field like comedy that is so male dominated, you have to like prove that you can hack it. And even if it's not explicitly stated, like you have to prove that you're man enough, it's like you have to prove that you're tough enough. You have to prove that you're all these other adjectives that are commonly associated with masculinity. So like, yeah, there would be these, I mean, there are, I can think of times in Berlin where it would be like after a show and, you know, 3 of my male comedian friends would be going to McDonald's and they'd ask me if I wanted to go. And it wasn't as easy as yes or no in my mind. It was like, yeah, you have to go because you have to show them you can go. No, you can't go. Remember, you're trying to lose weight. Like, okay, but you can go, but then you just throw it up. No, you can't go and then throw it up. That's not healthy. You know, so just the simple question posed by 3 innocent people who are just asking me if I want to go with them becomes this huge psychological stone that I have to carry. And then maybe I'll make it as far as McDonald's and I'll get into the McDonald's and be like, I have to go. I can't do this. You know, the weight of food, to use a pun, is an enormous psychological burden for me. Yeah. I don't know for other people, but for me, every meal, every time I have to eat, there's not a panic attack, but the seedlings of a panic attack. You know, it's yeah.
So over the years, have you developed some mechanism to cope with your relationship with food?
The sad answer is not really. I'm working on it now. I have very recently started seeing a nutritionist, and she has been talking to me a lot about thinking about fullness and hunger, eating when you're hungry, not eating when you're not hungry. She's been talking to me about body positivity and accepting, trying to not place a high value on an unreasonable standard of beauty. But I don't really have a coping mechanism yet. I am still very much, I'm still very much in the thick of that battle.
Do you want to hear some of my tricks?
Absolutely.
So with eating disorder, I only realized I have it also 3 years ago when I started to go to see therapists. But I had it since very young because my family was very poor and they never have time. My mom never has time for me. So the only joy I can ever got was food. I had no friends. I had no family support. School teachers, they bully me. So I always, and for example, in summer, if my mom go out to hang out with her friends, she would just give me 20 RMB for me to buy a whole roasted chicken and to eat the whole day as a child. So I remember that often I eat until I puke, and my mom wouldn't even know it's it's a bad thing, she would make fun about it. Say, oh, Moni likes to eat so much, she always puke. And then it was puberty in China. Women have very strict standards on their body weight. So since I was like 13, I was trying to lose weight. Then in China, there are lots of like magical diet. It's like, oh, you can lose weight as long as you only drink this magic soup for 7 days. And this magic soup is, you can put any vegetables in it. And you can eat as much as this soup as you want. And in 7 days, you magically lose weight. And now I was like, fuck, of course, you give me nothing but water and vegetable for 7 days. Of course, I lose weight. And then there's some like a magical diet, like apple and egg, magical diet. You every day you only eat like three eggs plus 7 apples, and magically you can lose weight. And now it's looking back, I was like, this is a confirmed path to eating disorder. But in China, people don't know, and they thought it's normal to girls should be super harsh on their body. So the more I was on want to lose weight, the more I eat more. So it's a vicious circle. And 2 years ago, I realized I have eating disorder, and I start to be more focused, like putting more attention on it. Then I realized every time when I start to excessive eating, is the time when I start to feel guilty about my eating. So then I learned to trick myself. For example, if I start to tip number one for me is never to try to lose weight. Be happy with my weight. I'm not super skinny, but I'm not super fat either. And in the past 15 years, I've been on yo-yo dieting for majority of the time. Reality proved I'm not good at being slim. Then just accept the weight I have now. If I gain a few kilos, it's fine. If I lose a few kilos, it's good. And I will still do sports, but I don't do sports because I want to lose weight. I do sports is because it's good for my mental health. And I stop to weight myself. And as soon as I accept this fact, then the impulsory to excessive eating reduced a lot. But once a while, when I have a very bad day, I want to eat a lot, or I accidentally eat a lot. I think the most important thing is to calm myself down, tell myself it's all okay. And normal people eat a big meal too, and there's nothing wrong about it. And just let me know it's all okay. I will not become 5 kilos heavier tomorrow. It's just one meal. Calm myself down to not feel this stress and shame. And as soon as I can manage my shame and the guilt, then the second day I can go back on normal track. I think for me, the key is to first, not try to lose weight. Second, manage my shame and the guilt. And third, also, like if I really want to eat a lot of stuff, I try to trick myself with healthy food. For example, bananas, fruits, vegetables, yogurt, anything more healthy than like junk food. Then I feel less shame also. I think shame is the real dragon here.
Absolutely. The shame, because we all need to eat, you know, and I absolutely agree. Yeah, it's the shame that gets you.
Yeah, and another trick I learned is my partner has a very healthy eating pattern. And since I'm with him, because he eats healthy, he never excessively eating, like once in a while for enjoying eating, but he never has shame. But normally he just stop eating when he's full. And I try to imitate him too. And also another trick, to just use smaller container at home.
Right. I've tried that. I see what's funny for me, or what's difficult for me. So I live with my mother, and a lot of my problems with eating come from her problems with eating.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like living on top of another eating disorder, and almost living on top of the eating disorder that gave me like my eating disorder. So I have this trouble where she will cook twice as much food as is needed. And it's sort of, with your mother, you have to pick your arguments. So it's good that we have leftovers, but I always have to be like, okay, we're going to eat half of this now, and half of it is going to be for tomorrow, or something like that. But it's always, because eating is a social thing. It's sometimes hard to manage your eating because you are living with someone else who has different needs or different preferences, or you're out with people, or you're this or you're that.
I'm lucky with the mom part. My mom also has eating disorder, but I'm lucky that first, he doesn't live with me. Second, now she has diabetes, so she cannot do it anymore.
Right.
She needs to check her blood sugar all the time, and when it's high, she stop eating. So I think that benefits me too, because there's no one eating like a pig around you.
Yeah, I would like that. I have eating going on around the clock at my house.
And when did you start to do comedy?
So I started to do comedy really young. I did my first open mic in New York when I was 18. I did it all through college. I kept doing open mics, and I did stand up through my 20s. I did improv, and I did sketch, and I worked for this show called the Colbert Report. And I got to this point where I felt like I really didn't like the person that I was. I was telling really dirty jokes all the time. I was always I basically, that was it. I was taking the lowbrow, easy, isn't it funny to hear a girl say jerk off or something like that, and I was really unhappy with the kind of comedian I was in my time. And then in my work day, I was writing jokes for someone else. And even though I was proud of those jokes, they weren't for me. I wasn't getting to, perform them or do them. And I just had a bit of an identity crisis of not liking who I was, and the person that I liked wasn't even me. That I quit my job, and I quit comedy altogether, and I became a teacher. And then I moved to Berlin, and I actually only started doing comedy. I did comedy sort of on a whim. There is the people who live in Berlin will know, the people who do not live in Berlin will not know, that there's a sort of a comedy institution called Cosmic Comedy. And they are right across the street from my favorite movie theater in Berlin called Berlin Babylon. And I was at an Alfred Hitchcock movie festival, and I left the movies and I saw, stand-up comedy here, open mic. And I thought, I used to do those. maybe I'll do one. Maybe it'll be fun. And then obviously, as soon as I did it again, I was like, oh, right, I love this. But then my second time around doing comedy, I didn't rely on the dirty jokes and on the easy laugh. And I like who I am much more, writing my own jokes for myself and feeling like I don't go for the cheap joke.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's you change or the thing around you is different?
Well, I think as I got older, I had more to talk about. Mm-hmm. I think in my 20s, like I said, I did my first open mic when I was 18. Nothing's happened to you when you're 18. Yeah. Or I mean, things have happened to you, but you don't have the perspective to reflect on them appropriately. I mean, you're a baby when you're 18. And at this point in my life, I've had several jobs. I've lived in many cities. I've had many relationships. I've had a life to talk about. I've had a life that I believe at this point is interesting to other people for me to share my experiences. I believe could be helpful and interesting to people. And I talk a lot about personal stuff on stage. I imagine one of the reasons you wanted to talk about eating disorders with me is that you've seen some of my jokes where I talk about my trouble with eating, my trouble with overeating. So it's, I used to do comedy for the audience, and now I do it for me. And as a result, the audience likes me a lot more. Mm-hmm. I think they don't like being pandered to. I think they like, if you're honest about yourself and you're vulnerable, I think that's what people respond to.
Do you feel comedy helps on your mental illness?
I do. I do feel that way. It definitely helped me get over my divorce. It helps me a lot with my eating disorder to be able to, when I get on stage and talk about the trouble I have with overeating and specifically the frenzy that I can get into when I'm overeating. And when I hear other people laugh, I know they know what I mean. It's just this wonderful way to connect with people, to hear people say, even if they haven't gone through exactly the same experience, they can empathize. They can say like, yeah, I can see how you might get that way with food. Or when I talk about my divorce and I get a certain kind of laugh, some laughs are just laughs, but some laughs you can hear there's more to them. And there's like oh yeah, I've been there. I've felt that. So in that respect, I think comedy really has helped me.
Do you miss it now?
Oh, sorry. I miss it so much, man. I miss it so much. I haven't been on a real stage. I've done a couple of Zoom shows and like other online type shows, but I haven't been on a real stage since March, and it's terrible. Even just to vent your frustrations, I think it's nice. If you have a bad day at work, you don't just have to go home and sit in your bad day. You can write a joke about it. And
I think comedy for me is like the little tattoo you have on your arm. Like I struggle with self-esteem and self-doubt. But every time when I'm really, really feeling down, I just listen to one of my recordings and listen to the laughs I got. Because the laughs cannot lie. If you are funny, they laugh. If you are not funny, no one can force them to laugh. So if it's so loud, that means I was good. I am talented. I'm not a piece of garbage. Life is worth living.
That's a great way to say it. The laughs cannot lie. It's so true. Because it's a natural, it's an involuntary physical response. Laughter. And yeah. I miss it, man.
Yeah.
Also, please. Oh no, sorry. Continue. Oh, I was just going to say also, like, when you talk about coping mechanisms and to ground yourself when you're having, maybe not, because not every breakdown is a breakdown. You know, some breakdowns are like mini breakdown, or like bad days, bad experiences that you have to get the taste out of your mouth. And for me, I have, you know, a handful of favorite comedy albums. And if I listen to one of those, it just brings me back. First, it brings me out of reality. You know, it brings me I just listen to the jokes and I listen to the laughter, and it reminds me of what's really important. And then when the album is over and I come back to reality, I realize that the thing that I was so worked up about isn't worth all that emotional energy.
I totally agree. I had a mental breakdown 2 days ago, and this is what I wrote on my notebook. I was writing, I think everything is collapsing. I'm going on an edge right now. I don't know what to do. I fear I'm going to explode if I don't do comedy. Then I turn on Netflix. I watched both the first and the second Netflix special of Ali Wong. Then I feel better.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And 2 days ago, I was really feeling I'm spinning. My mind is spinning so hard. I was going crazy. And at that moment, I thought owning comedy can help me.
I miss it so much, dude.
I really hope this summer, next summer, I can see you in Berlin again.
Yeah, I'm hoping this summer 2021, I'm going to be for like 8 weeks is my hope that I'll be out there. I hope it starts up in New York as well, though, because in theory, I'm supposed to be doing it here too. But yeah, I miss Berlin. I miss Berlin like crazy.
Me too. I miss Berlin without the quarantine.
Right. That's what I mean.
Yeah. So speaking of great comedy specials, do you have one to recommend if some audience now is experiencing some dark times? What's your favorite comedy special for our topic?
For our topic, my favorite comedy special is Gary Gulman. The special is called The Great Depression. Wow. It is about mental illness. Very specifically, it's about one of his recent struggles. He talks a lot about a stay in a hospital. He talks about getting electroconvulsive therapy. And he talks about his struggles, like a lot of what we talked about, the struggles that he had before he realized he had struggles. He talks about his childhood as someone with depression, not knowing what depression was. And it's so funny, and it's about such a tough topic, and it still manages to be so funny and so joyful and quite moving. And I've been recommending it like crazy to anyone who will listen to me. It came out earlier this year.
Oh my God. It sounds exactly like the kind of special I want to write. Oh my God, he took my idea.
I think he wants you to write it too. I think we can't have too many. I don't think there's such thing as too many comedy specials about mental illness. I think we need all of the ones we can get.
Yes.
But I really do strongly recommend it.
What's the name again?
The name of the comedian is Gary Gulman, Gulman. And the title of the album is The Great Depression.
Cool. I will check it out.
It's great. It's and it's really the kind of special. He's the kind of comedian that you really feel like is talking to you. You know, not so much like there's some comedians, and this isn't a value judgment. I don't think one is better than the other. But there are some comedians who sound like they're up on a soapbox talking to everyone. They're like, this is what's wrong with the world. And there are some comedians who feel like they're just talking to you.
Yeah.
And like you're the only one that the special is for. And it's one of those where where I felt like it felt to me like a friend was telling me about his experiences, not like a celebrity had a special.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I will definitely check it out for my next minor breakdown. Nowadays, I realize I have breakdown almost every other day, so it will.
So you'll listen to it soon.
Yeah, very soon, very soon. So, the next question is, if you wake up feeling it's a bad day, feeling horrible, do you have some routines, some tips to make it a not so bad day?
All my tips and my routines are very, I was raised by the television. I take great comfort in television episodes from my childhood, especially Seinfeld and the old Simpsons episodes. If I can watch one of those and laugh, it reminds me of the joy that there is to be had in the world. If I can take that 20 minutes, 22 and a half minutes, or however long an episode of American television is, to just leave my troubles by my side and engage with the comedy and with the story, and just let that all take over for me. Mm-hmm. That really helps me. When the episode is over, I feel much more grounded, much more connected to a manageable reality. If I let me put it this way, I take a fictional, I take a brief chunk of unreality, mm-hmm. and it helps me connect back to my reality.
Very philosophical. Okay, our last question of this episode. I think there are some audience watching this, they are actually also experiencing the mental illness themselves. If you can say one thing to our audience, what would you tell them?
Hold on. Just hold on. Hold on. Don't let go. It will get there. Hold on.
Thank you. I need that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hold on. We're all here for you. We all, I mean, if I can say more than that, we'll all get through it together alone, but mm-hmm. alone together. Mm-hmm. And hold on.
Cool. Thank you so much to be on this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's just so wonderful.
Mm-hmm. I hope with this show we can actually help a few people, if not the audience, because I currently don't have audience. So if not the actual audience, at least we can help each other by talking it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
this was so wonderful.
I think so too. Okay, let's wrap it up. Dear audience, I hope you enjoyed this show. If you liked the show, please leave us a comment about what you think. Do you have experience with eating disorder or depression? Are you on different medications? What type of medication you are on? Just leave us a comment below. And most importantly, I hope you have a great day and hold on. And stay alive.
Stay alive. Hold on. Stay alive.
Cool. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.